Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Adobe Live Studio Sessions, where we have conversations about creativity, career paths, and technology. I'm your host, Emily Poulin, and joining me today in studio is illustrator and art director from Southern California, Tyler Pate, or Way of California, I guess is a better way.
That's Los Angeles.
And designer and illustrator Ashley, all the way from Canada.
Hi, excited to be here.
Chat, we're also really excited that you are here. Something that's special about this format is that we are live in real time. So if you have questions, conversations, want to be a part of it, we would love for you to do so. So maybe drop in the chat where you're watching from. If you're yet caffeinated this morning, what you're drinking, we would love to know. And then one last announcement. If you are not yet subscribed to our channel, we would love for you to do so. So find that subscribe button and make sure that you stay up to date on what we are doing and when we are going live by subscribing to our channel. Those are the announcements for today.
That was incredible.
Yeah. Are you subscribed, both of you?
I am now.
Satisfied.
Yeah. There's no other answer. Yes, I'm subscribed.
All right. Well, Tyler, Ashley, so glad that you're here with us today. Tyler, you have an amazing portfolio ranging from SpongeBob to the Foo Fighters to all sorts of really exciting career points. Could you give us an intro about who you are for maybe people who aren't as familiar with your work?
Yeah. So I am a graphic designer, illustrator. I feel like there's a lot of titles that we juggle all the time. But I mean, art director, content creator, educator, speaker. But I'm a graphic designer. I'm an illustrator at heart. I think that's kind of what I keep going back to. But I've been busy. I've dabbled in a lot of things.
I love it. And then Ashley, how's chat doing? Are we here this morning? Everyone's doing well?
Oh, yeah. We've got tons of people. Hi, hello. Did you want an update on the drinks? We've got a flat white. We've got a black coffee.
Why do I feel like the flat white was someone in this room? I'm a little curious. Well, cool. So Tyler, did you always know, like going way, way back, or as far back as you want to go, I guess, did you always know that you want to do something in the creative field? What did those early days look like for you?
Well, I will say surpriser. I never felt like I excelled in school or class, like traditionally, but art class, I did. Art class was something that was kind of like my safe haven and kind of where I found a bigger voice for me, and it was an outlet. So I knew early on that this had to be a part of my life in some capacity. I wasn't too focused on, is that a career or is that something like a job of, I don't know. I never really thought that far ahead, but I just knew that I enjoyed these elements of whether that's drawing or painting or sculpting. I just always had these things. I was that little hobby kid, I was just making things. So I had this mission to whatever that is, I wanted that to kind of be that next step, or at least where could I make that into something like a career once I got towards like high school. Yeah, but I didn't know. I had to Google, how do I do this drawing, painting, sculpting, maybe something like album art. Googled all that. What is that as a career? And it said graphic design. I mean, it was that basic. I just wasn't exposed to it as a kid, and definitely didn't have anyone in my life that knew any other way of that. So that was all I needed. And I had an older cousin who also kind of helped me with just focusing art and design in a way that it's like, all right, if he's doing that, then I like what he's doing. I want to continue that too. So it was kind of a avenue.
When we talked before, you told me a little bit about like the unique competition that you and your cousin would have when you were like drawing things as a kid. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so that's my cousin Darby. He's about a year or two older than me, but was always just a grade ahead. So even in high school, we went to the same high school. And then we eventually ended up going to the same university, which was not too far from where we grew up. So there was like a real nice commute for us. But he was just that outlet. I grew up around a lot of cousins. Family was kind of a bigger deal for me, and they were all similar age. So I would just be around them for summers and, blocks of holidays. And we would just always skateboard. So that's kind of where we bonded most, of skateboarding and then drawing, and we were into the same stuff. So we'd make little brands together, but we didn't realize what we were doing. It was more like, this is a skate wax company. Oh, what if we had our own skate wax company? And then we were like drawing labels and then printing them. And I'm literally melting down a candlestick into a muffin pan. And then making little blocks. Yeah, drop by drop, by the way. Looking back, I'm like, just put the whole thing in the oven. But
the process, you would get there.
I know. I don't know. I could have been probably 7 or 8. I mean, I was pretty young, just before a teenager. But it was a moment of, this is just cool. And to be able to claim it is like, oh, I made that and use it. And then we had those competitions of like, he had a brand that's like, oh, I need to have a character too. So it was like, we just fed off that for years. And I owe a lot of, respect in my path to that kind of competition in a way. And it was friendly though. It was more like critiquing, but with it being family, it's like we can critique and then actually get to the point and not just, tiptoe around it. It's like, oh no, you need to do this or you should do that. Here's what I'm influenced by. And it's like, okay. And then I'm applying it to class and outside projects.
There was no budget involved, so the critique was open.
Yeah, no, there's no running from it. It's there.
So wait, was the pencil head character a nice little visual aid on your hat here? Was that your character from this time? No, this is a later edition.
But I will say there's definitely some common threads where I start thinking about it of just having like an entity or like a thing or a brand or something that is truly yours. I think that definitely dates back to that time of just creating something for your own sake of just making it. That's where this stemmed from. But no, this was back in 2017 when I finally fully developed it. And then from there, it's kind of where it is now.
Amazing. A little bit in the future. So we'll get to that point.
We'll get to it, yeah.
So you're in high school, you're Googling, you decide graphic design is going to be what I'm going to do. Where do you go from there?
Oh, man. So a small university right outside of where I grew up. Again, for me, I didn't have much when it comes to opportunities or even finances and things like that. So it's like I was very conscious of how can I do this affordably? How can I do this without this huge overhead? So that was a school that I could commute to. That was where I didn't have to pay room and board. I'm like an account guy when it comes to these kind of things because it's like that's what you had to do, or at least what I had to do at the time. So the school that I ended up finding was Francis Marion University, and it was a really exciting time because they had a little slither of an art department, and visual communications what I majored in.
Okay.
And they taught me the first time ever to be on Photoshop and Illustrator. I didn't have a clue really what those, I had a little bit of Photoshop, but I've never used it. And it was all there is where I had to kind of understand the tools a bit more, take design classes. And that was a really exciting time because we didn't have a lot even in that program, but it taught me to be scrappy. And then when I started to know pretty far into my education that, oh, what about going to an art school? I think that's what a lot of us talk about. It's like, oh, I went to an art school, or you should go to an art school. A lot of times that's not cheap.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I would think about maybe it's just worth a chance. Maybe I should. And then I would go to events. And I think a lot of the events that I would go to, I'd meet people who go to those schools, and I would hear their point of view, and I would see what their work is. And I'm like, oh, like my work's not that far off, even though I'm in a little bubble in South Carolina making my stuff in my class. But I think there was something of, well, maybe we didn't have all the bells and whistles, but we were able to really focus our energy and time rather than getting things printed at a printer, like an actual print shop. I'm doing it at home on a little Epson printer, and
making
I'm
it work,
mocking it up with X-Acto blades, and I'm learning that, oh, but this looks real because I made it real. And you can kind of get by a lot of ways like that.
Yeah, I feel like so much of creativity and design is creative problem solving, right? And so
that's exactly
in some ways you were dealt maybe a different set of problems, but allowing you to even dive deeper into that. I mean, I think there's something to say for that. So these meetings that you would go to, I think you told me the names, I forgot now, but they weren't close. They were like 2 to 3 hours away, right? And you were investing the time in that. How did you hear about that, and what made it worth it to you?
That's where I would say my professors were champions. They were involved enough to where like, hey, there's this, maybe it's a dribble meetup or like AIGA kind of thing. And there's a talk that's happening. For me at the time, it was like Columbia, South Carolina, which is 2 hours, or maybe Charleston, which is like almost 3 hours. Wow. They're like, there's something happening over there. You should get your classmates and you guys go, trucking all over there. And I think that kind of gave me this idea of, oh, it's not going to be next door always. You have to kind of make the effort. And I think that intentional effort was something that I needed to learn. And that's what I was eventually able to do and meet connections. The first design talk I ever saw was through it was an event that was in Columbia. And it was Aaron Draplin.
Wow.
It was the first time ever seeing someone for sure that caliber out the gate, showing what's possible, where you can go with it, the type of work that really resonates. And it just had such an impact on me to, it's like, okay, I need to go to more of these. There's something with these, and these are my people, because I like talking shop like this.
Yeah, I feel like creative community can really push your career so much farther,
Mm-hmm.
and finding that feeling where you fit in, who you can look up to.
Yeah.
Even when we spoke, you were saying that, this career path was something that wasn't necessarily the norm for where you grew up and for your family necessarily. So did that kind of validate for you? Like, oh, this is a real career. People are doing this. I want to pursue this. How did that impact maybe your perception or your community's perception of this job?
It's a good question. I think there's something with way I view my path back then. There was just no other option. So I never really thought like, oh, this is clicking or this is working. Or for sure, my family, they were very supportive. But if you talk about graphic design,
not many people know.
It's like, what does that mean?
Right.
But there was a point of sitting back and just talking it through to people where it's like that box of Kraft macaroni and cheese, like somebody designed that.
Right.
Somebody made that box. Somebody had to take those photos. Someone had to make that ad. When I start realizing that and breaking it down and talking in that way, I start to realize like, yeah, I'm talking myself up too. And it's like, I think that's a little voice in my, my head that I keep saying is like, this is everywhere around us and it does matter. And I think it can be really exciting whenever you can focus it to then realize like, oh, I can make that impact in a way creatively. And then again, it's problem solving. I love the problem solving. That's like the biggest piece for me too. The designing, it's fun, but the little challenges, like the puzzle piece, the final puzzle piece clicking in, that's so satisfying. It's like, yes, it all lines up.
And it feels right.
Yeah.
When you talk about projects, you mentioned that there is this like 30, not a day, 30 a month, or like you challenge yourself every day to do one of the same things. So it was like one of the same hat, one of the whatever. Can you walk us through like how you came up with that and then what that did to like impact your creativity?
Well, so those are little design series that I did early on in my career where I just needed an outlet. I needed something to get better at. And these were little design challenges. I just came up with 30 because of whatever, however many days of the month there was. But plenty of people do those. And I think I was able to latch on to some of my favorite designers like on Dribbble and stuff at the time. And they did a lot of series. So it would be, just pick a topic. It could be food. It could be cities, travel, anything like that. Maybe your favorite buildings or skyscrapers. And try to illustrate a different one every day. And then try to focus it into like the same style or the same color palette for each of these illustrations. I did a lot of those for 4 years straight, where I was doing my 9 to 5, and then on the downtime, I'm just putting everything into like illustrating and focusing. And that repetition, it's a muscle for sure. And I think that was something that, looking back, I can clearly see that was where things changed. That was where I wasn't so focused afterwards on the tools, but on the concepts and the art direction and the strategy. Because like, what's a good consistent series? What's something that I can do for 30 days? What's something that is just honestly compelling, but pushing my work at the same time and kind of tricking me from it being work? That's like the biggest secret to it.
Yeah, right. It's like what's challenging for me, but what also is going to grow me. And I think when you look at people who have great success in their careers and in what they're passionate about, it really comes down to like, oh, I chose to do this myself. It's not usually the client project that pushes you forward. And sometimes it is, right? Like I didn't know till they asked me to, right? There is that, but there is so much to say for people who are putting the extra hours. I remember you were telling me a story of like, yeah, I go out, I would work all day, go out with my friends, then come home and then work more, right? Because you just wanted to keep pushing this forward. And I think there's so much to say for that.
Yeah. I mean, I can even take this back to the days with my professors. One of the things they told all their students, and it really stuck with me, was you've got to love this. And it's very simple, and you could take that and run with it, but it's, you've got to love this. There is no other option. There is no other path. Like, this is it. That has been my laser focus and really what gets into every project and every passion project, because we're talking, I don't know how to illustrate this piece, but I'm going to illustrate this piece. I don't know how long it's going to take. A lot of times it's 9-10 hours figuring out one little thing, and it's for no money, and it's for just me. Even if no one sees it, it's like, I can do this now because I put in the time. That was really the fire for me. And I love that idea of just getting better. It's like a really fun piece. It it's the carrot maybe on the end of the stick of like, I love to master something, but I know I'm not going to really ever master it because it's so large, but in a fun way, because it keeps me moving. It keeps just like a path. And that's all I needed.
Yeah, you can definitely tell you love it if you see like this is a lifelong challenge,
Yeah.
but I love it and I want to keep doing it. I mean, it definitely speaks to that. There is another piece of advice, or not even advice, a statement that one of your professors said to you that, or to the class, I think it was just a whole of like, you'd be lucky one day to be an art director.
Yeah.
And your first job, you ended up being an art director. Can you talk
Yeah.
about maybe how that statement either challenged you or reframed how you wanted to approach your career?
Well, my professors were being very realistic, and I think that's, again, I have that side of my brain too, where I'm staying grounded. You have to be grounded in some way just to have the day to day. But my professors really did grill that into us, where it's like, you're lucky to get to that level. You're lucky to even have this as a career. You're lucky to last this many years. Like these little sayings. I mean, not as discouragement. I never took it as that. I took it as like, oh, you're giving me real honest advice, and I'm going to take this to heart, and I'm going to like hone it. But it gave me a little bit of the fire of like, okay, is that what the challenge is? Is that what it needs to be? Is that the bar? And I think maybe that's just a piece of how I like to view challenges. It's like, okay, that's it. If that's that, then that's what I'm going to strive for. And then that was one where, yeah, that was probably my senior year, and that was kind of on the portfolio review, classes where they're really getting those hard hitting questions. But whenever it came to finding an actual job, I ended up getting a job with a place that I interned at, and then through negotiation, I was like, all right, well, this is something that I want to leverage and try to make a point of getting, and I was able to land that to the way that I wanted. So it was really nice. But at the end of the day, those titles are, different no matter where you are. So
Yeah.
I learned that. It's like titles are interesting. Being an art director is interesting, but there's different ways of looking at that everywhere you go. So
we were talking about that too, right? Where you're like, oh, I was at this job and art director meant I was hands-on and I was doing the work, or I was here and they were like, oh, that's not actually what we want you to do. And navigating that can be different throughout, where you're working.
Yeah, it's like sharpening a different skill, but there's something to it because I was always up for the challenge, and I was always just being positive in those situations. I was like, all right, well, is this what I need to do? I'll just do it. If I need to be hands-on and I need to get in there and make it, I'll just make it. I never was like, oh, that's not my job. That's their job.
Below me.
Like, I want to do it if I can do it. I was always happy with that. So my roles have always been kind of like this gray area, because I'm wearing a lot of different hats, usually, especially nowadays. Because if we need to illustrate something, well, I can work with the Illustrator team because I can know what it takes to make it, but I can speak to it as like or an art director or a creative director. And I think that's another side of this skill that I don't think a lot of people talk about.
Yeah. I do want to check in briefly. How's chat?
Yeah. So just going back to what you're talking about, your own personal challenges and those kind of projects you're doing, there was a really good point brought up by, I think this is Jacob Paris.
Oh, nice. What's up, Jacob?
Hi, Jacob. He just mentioned that removing the money pressure is so important. And I kind of wanted to get your input on that aspect.
I think there's different phases, and I would say mindsets for me when it comes to that. I think when it's my personal stuff, it does eliminate a little bit of this. I call it like being on the hook for something, because it's like, oh, I am on the hook for this going right or going wrong, and I need to make sure I deliver. But when it's my personal stuff, I'm on the hook for it needs to be better than the last thing.
Ooh.
Always. Sometimes whenever I'm working with clients or things for any sort of like payment or money, there's not that I'm not trying to push the boundaries every time, but there is a variable of time. There's a variable of effort. And there's all these other little components, to Jacob's point, that can kind of take you away from that creative process in an organic way. That if it's just for my own stuff, the creative pain, I am all those little hats. So I get to make those decisions, but I get to hone it, where it's like, oh, if this takes an extra day, okay. If this takes a month, or if I don't even show this, okay. Because I have eliminated that pressure. And it allows me to like really, quite literally, cook on the work and get it right. And then it's like, I'll serve it when it's ready.
Do you ever feel that it kind of I don't know how to explain it, but like, you ever find yourself like almost chasing perfection and like you just keep working on the thing, keep working on it, and maybe like you just never feel like it's good enough and you just want to keep going and going and maybe it's never considered finished? I don't know.
There's been a period where it was just that, where it was, oh, this isn't good enough, and I never showed it, or this is good, but I'm just really upset with this, and it'll just bug me for the rest of the time. But I've gotten to a point now where when I exhaust it, that's kind of how I look at it. Where when I've exhausted the illustration, to where like in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, you've done 3 days of this. If you push it further with detail, you're gonna lose this little moment you're having with it, and it's gonna be too much. And I think that restraint of like, this is good enough. That's kind of like a little content that I've gotten these days, which has really helped me just keep it moving, because the progress doesn't happen, in generally speaking, from that illustration. It's from a lot of these illustrations. It's back to, I can stem it back to the early days. It's that repetition. And I try to focus that a bit more, where it's like, all right, this one didn't do it, but this next one can. And then I keep it going.
I want to touch on something interesting that you shared when we were talking prior to this about you've worked in-house at a lot of amazing places, and you've had this ability to see into different agencies and freelancers. And you said this point of at one point over-delivering is actually not helpful, right? As a freelancer, you're like, oh, I'm going to wow him. I'm going to give him this, and this. And then you were sitting on the other side of that. Can you walk us through when it is beneficial to over-deliver, or what that line is for people who are maybe freelancing or working with agency?
Yeah, so just a backstory on that, because it's very specific situations, I would say. Because with that situation, I've been on the inside as an art director for these bigger studios, and a lot of times working with creative agencies or freelancers, you get a lot of inbound concepts and work, and you have to sort through it. What I found was, know who you're working with. If you're the outside looking in, say you are that freelancer, know who you're working with. Like if I was working with you, I know that you're an illustrator. I know you're a designer, but maybe I'm working with you at a capacity of you're an art director or a creative director, but I know you could do what I'm doing, and I know you could send it a lot further if you wanted to. Knowing that changes, I think, how you present to that person. And being in those shoes, a lot of times I just want to see sketches. We could jump to the vector and we could jump to the polished thing. And I know you could knock that out of the park, but I just want to see sketches. So that restraint is what I'm getting at in those moments, is just know who you're delivering it to and be very specific to their ask and need. Because a lot of times if you just go above and beyond, you're probably going well past the marker that internally for that agency that they're organizing, because if you get too far ahead, then I'm looking at it from a budget standpoint as an art director. I'm like, man, I know you just wasted about 5 hours on that when I wish it was for something else. And we could have just kept the sketches. So there's like a little bit of give and pull. And there's definitely times where it's like, okay, I want to see what you could do. And I'll just push it all over, and then let's see what happens. And I've had some amazing results from that too. But specifically for that question, I think just knowing who you're delivering to, and knowing if they can visualize it. That's really what I'm getting at, because you would probably be able to visualize what the illustration is from a sketch. So you don't really need to see it fully if you're just trying to iron it out, trying to focus the concept more in those early stages. So that's kind of where I was getting at.
Yeah, I think it's great advice. I want to go back to, you had a really interesting interview process of trying to get your first internship. Can you walk us back to even those initial days and like how you approached it? Because at the end you ended up landing two internships in one day, which is phenomenal. Can you walk us through what that process was like?
Oh man, it's a funny thing. If anyone's trying to navigate this industry, it doesn't happen really overnight, and it doesn't really make sense until you've had some time to look back on it. And I feel like I've been talking about this a bit more recently, because there's a point of, I've been in this for about 15 years now professionally, and I forget about those early days. But what's really exciting is like, I'm kind of repeating a lot of the same things, just in different ways. It's in me. But back then when I was in college, I think all of us know, there's a point where it's like, you got to get an internship. Got to get it. You only have maybe a year left. when are you going to get it? We got the pressure from our professors, like, you should try to get one maybe this summer or maybe now, figure it out. I didn't have hardly any connections. I tried to do the email cold calls. I tried to find people and get something on the books to go to and interview for. And I was just having the hardest time. I had a portfolio. I had a printed portfolio. I had an actual book that I made, and I made about 10 or 20 of these things, all handmade. And I was willing to give them away. I'm not saying I was just giving them away to anyone. So it was very intentional, but I was willing to give them away. And when I never heard back from these agencies, I realized that I was going to go to Charleston, South Carolina. That was kind of where this is going. So I was going to make a day trip. All of these agencies that I've been talking to or trying to talk to on email, they're there. I'm going to make a day trip. Just go door to door. Not going up there, not just abruptly. It's more like I'm going to knock. Hey, I'm just going to hand deliver this. I'm Tyler. I'm in school. I'm going to be graduating too. I'm looking for an internship. Here you go. Bye. I was so surprised with how many peers and creatives were like, this is yours? You made this? Oh, come on up. Not saying that that's, you expect to get inside these places, but I'm saying there's a point of just doing that extra step, going the extra literal miles, hand delivering these things, and then let the universe tell me where it's going to go. And then I had a couple people, sit down with me and look through it. And sure enough, all of a sudden there's an offer of, yeah, we'd love to have you for the whole summer. And I'm like, well, it'll just be maybe 1 month of the summer. I had some other people I had to go, visit and deliver a portfolio to. And then I was able to work it to where I had 2 internships that summer. So I had like 1 month here, 1 month there, and then just leveraging, can I get one that's paid? And maybe I can try for this one, and just really casting the net as far as I could with what I had. And sure enough, it landed 2 internships, actually a few more, but those are the 2 that I went with. And it was because of that book. It was that tangible thing. And also just being willing to just go face to face and have a conversation, be human, and be like, here's a little humility in my work. And, if anything, I'm Tyler. That's it. I wasn't expecting really much if I got rejected, but there was for sure a time where I was so nervous. I was so nervous to think about going door to door to people I don't know, or even just, what do I say? I think secretly like introverted, but there's moments of, I remember talking to my mom, and she's like been a huge support for me, where I'm on the phone and I was like, well, no one's responding to my email. Like, should I still go and just leave this on the doorstep? It's like, you're already there. Just do it. Just walk over there, drop the book off. That's it. And it got me out of the car enough to where I went to the first one. And once I did the first one, I was like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then I just went down the line.
Shout out moms of Adobe Live.
I know, right?
I feel like moms are doing the
Gotta
most
have
with
the support.
that.
Yeah.
But there is something to say that of like even just that outside voice of like, even for someone who's outside of the industry per se, right? It's not like your mom's a art director or creative director,
she
right?
Didn't have a clue with it.
She's like, no, just go do it. It's totally fine. It's totally normal. I think having that support it makes all the difference, right?
Does.
Got you in those doors. So you got these offers of these internships. I remember you saying that maybe it wasn't like the salary that you wanted with this, but you're like, oh, but I could get the title that I wanted, or it wasn't this. Could you talk us through like what those early negotiations look like as you're setting these like initial career milestones for yourself?
Well, I would say early on, it's really hard to leverage yourself for money when you're not getting paid anything. But I mean, you can look and see what the basis of any city or area is paying for what we're doing, and then just kind of round under it a little bit. And you have to be realistic. For me, I'm willing to take anything, and then that's the bottom line. But I'm not just saying that's all and be all. It's like, all right, that's locked in. All right, let me see if I can go over here and leverage this number to that number. And it's like, well, I already got this other offer. Here's what I'm doing. If this doesn't work out with this place I'm trying to go to, well, I'll just go back to that one. That works. Early on, any option is a foot in the door. And I definitely was fortunate and humbled to have an opportunity, but I did always want to leverage it. And whenever it got to a point where this is all we can do for salary or commission or anything like that, that's where you can kind of pivot it. It's like, well, what about a title change, or what about a role that incorporates this other piece of thing that I like to do, or you have more ownership, things like that. I'm to this day, I'm still leveraging that type of mindset.
I think that's smart, and I think that gets you further in things, right? If it's not just this immediate fit, okay, well, like, how can I make this work for me? I think it gets you in a lot more doors.
It does. Like, I want to emphasize too, because it's like, it's not thinking like, oh, this is what I'm worth and I'm not going to do anything but this. There's moments where I have to sit back and say, all right, well, I am reaching too high. I am willing to take a step back, take a dip in the ego, and then it's like, all right, it's fine. Now I'm working, and now I can go up from here and put in your hours. I mean, everything is that. So you have to prove your worth. You have to prove your value in a lot of ways.
How do you balance that of like proving that you're willing to put in the hours and doing the work, but not in this constant catching up of like, I hope they think I'm good enough. I hope that I'm delivering. I feel like there's a balance of like confidence, and also, I'm not even sure what the other word would be, but there's a stressful, it could be very stressful. How do you balance that? Or what advice do you have for someone who's newer?
There's different, newer, that's a better focus. Because for me, when I was fresh into this industry, I feel like there was a point of saying everything you just said. Am I good enough? Is this good enough? And I'm like, everything's got a question mark on the end. But when you start to get more familiar with critiques and then people's reactions and people being stoked about your work, you start to build a little bit of confidence. And for me, I felt like I started almost like at zero of confidence when it came to my work. I was like, okay, maybe. Is that good? I worked really hard on it. I hope it's good.
Yeah.
But there was points where having that dialogue and then being open and receptive of critiques. I'm a huge believer in that. Like, everything can be better. We just have to accept it. And then as you get more experience, as you get more, or you see more, you can get to filter out what advice to take and what to obviously keep moving. And that becomes you as a creative. That's kind of what my DNA makeup is. It's like, all right, well, these are good responses. This is an area that I was hoping to get a critique on, and they went straight to it. Perfect. That's what I wanted to hear about. And then I focused that conversation on a problem that I need help fixing. But it just grows. I think your question was talking about, like, say your question again. I was like,
honestly, it was a very big, I think you answered it well. I think it was open-ended. So you worked at this agency, and when you look back at it, you're like, oh, I meant to be there. You told me the story of like, you walked in and they were celebrating like your 5-year, and you said, oh, I actually didn't mean to be here longer than 2 years maybe.
Yeah.
What was that realization like, and what did it look like then to take that next step?
Yeah, and that's just a personal like goal setting for me. I grew up in South Carolina, very small town, South Carolina, my whole life. And then to move to what was a bigger city, which was Charleston at the time, I just knew that was one step, and I always wanted to go further out. So I always approached those early stages like, all right, here's a timestamp. That's going to be whenever I leave. But something very human and real happened, which is time flies by. Like, it's so fast the older you get, to where it was supposed to be in my head a couple years, turned to 5. Nothing bad about that at all. I learned so much in 5 years that I can kind of look back and I'm like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty rad. I did some awesome work there. But there was a moment where, celebrating that, I remember reflecting on myself, where I was like, well, you said you would only be here for a couple years, and now it's 5. And then I immediately started seeing another 5 flying by. That's just where my head went. It's like, I could see it go by just as quick again. So I need to make a move to make a growth stance for my work, but also just for where I want to be. Because there's something that I'm chasing too, where I want to, again, it gets back to kind of mastering it, and I'm very interested in a lot of industries of design. So I want to, dip my toe in everywhere I can. So that was kind of a point of view that it's like, all right, that's a moment I need to own up to what I said I was going to do and make a jump. And it's scary, but it worked out.
So what was the jump that you made?
I jumped to what turned to full-time freelance.
Right.
But at the time, I was trying to pursue another like bigger company, but I was trying to go to a bigger city. So I was thinking like New York or LA. And what I found out it's really hard to get a foot in the door. Like, it's the same repeating thing. It's
Right.
like, I don't know anyone over there. Well, who do I reach out to? Who do I keep following up to? It's too random. Not saying that doesn't work, but it's really a challenge to get a foot in the door like that. But while I was trying to pursue these other jobs, still in design, illustration, things like that, I was always making still. So I still had a couple freelance projects going on while I was looking. But I created a buffer financially for me before I left my job. I was like, this is my little nest egg. This gives me a little bit of time to get things moving until that next big jump. And funny enough, something like the pandemic happened around that time. So there was a moment of, there is a huge influx of, you can work from anywhere, and we need a lot of freelance help. So I started organically just ramping up, just taking jobs as they're coming in. And I was a go-getter for just about anything. You need a contractor for, this finance company to do designs for flyer. Okay, got it. You need a logo? Got it. Illustration for a banner? Got it. I just said yes to everything. And I was learning how to pivot on the dime, work, like getting dropped in on a Monday to a new organization and having to be up and running by Wednesday and deliver by Friday, all while also handling other freelance jobs. You learn a lot. You learn a lot. So I did that for about 3 years, full time.
That, impressive. Also an interesting time. I feel like the pandemic was, a range of experiences for a lot of people, but for freelancers, I think there was a different experience. So a lot of people got extra work that they weren't anticipating, or new clients, and budgets suddenly were available that used to be for other things. Like, it was a wild time. What were your early frameworks for yourself of like, okay, I need to get organized. I'm gonna, do this, or what were those initial steps that help you be successful while juggling all these clients?
A portfolio, constantly sharing your work. That I cannot stress how important that was. It's not just a blind leap from that job that I was at to just freelance. That's something I can't stress enough to anyone starting out. I had 5 years of work. I had a portfolio, but I also had been growing social media at the time. And that was kind of early social media. That would have been 2019 when I left. But between 2014 to 2019, I got on the hustle of sharing my process, sharing my work. There was a pivotal moment where this is no longer me sharing my life in the sense of Instagram. This is sharing my portfolio, as in my work. That was a pivot. That was so pivotal for me, where I started becoming known for this style. I started sharing those series posts through there and then getting more of an audience. That started creating more freelance. So that keeping that going constantly in the background, creating enough passion projects to where you can keep that going even if you don't have the client work. That was a real tangent for me to you got to focus all of this at once. But it was really important though, because it kept it going.
And did you at the time only post your portfolio work, or were you sharing about you as yourself, as the creator, or was there a step in front of the camera for yourself of also, hi, I'm Tyler and this is all my work? Was there intentional delineation between the two, I guess? Yeah,
for that time, for sure. Because I wanted it to be about the work and not me, which is that's one way of looking at all of this. I don't know if I would do it the same now, but there was a point where I want the work to be the first and foremost thing, which is kind of where this eyeballing and coming up with this thing of the creative pain came from, where it's like, I don't let that be the focus. I don't want to take away from the work. I want to be about me in that sense, but it's the craft, and that's what the social media became.
And is that where, so someone from Paramount reached out? Paramount, is that correct? Reached out to you, found you. Was that through social media, or what did that reach out look like?
I don't know the exact thing or
sure
pieces or work or whatever they saw, but I do know it was an outreach email. Who would soon be my manager suggested me for this art director role at Paramount for Nickelodeon's consumer products team. That was the initial outreach. I was just shocked because I was like, well, I don't know who this person is, but I'm stoked to hear more, and I was being considered for this position, so I was excited. Yeah.
What do you think what lessons did you learn in-house at like a really big corporation like this that you hadn't learned previously at a smaller agency or freelancing?
I think I've learned more because I was with Paramount for 3 years. I learned more there than I think anywhere else in my career, for sure. It's a huge undertaking of the type of work that you're doing and the scale that you're doing it for and the teams that you're working on. And for my role in particular, just creating consumer products, I thought I knew consumer products, but when you get in-house, you really get to understand the different sectors of consumer products. And then how do you deliver for a theatrical movie? How do you deliver for like core brands, such as that's just a overarching SpongeBob or TMNT or Avatar? And then how do you deliver for promotional stuff? All of those are kind of different in how you handle it and also what the deliverable is. So being internal, you get to see how those decisions are made. You get to understand how to execute towards them. And then for, again, what I was doing was an art director, so I get to bring in talent. So I got to bring in my favorite illustrators, got to bring in my favorite agencies, and then help steer this ship into a weight of, a release, which was really fun.
Was there someone that you were looking up to who was like helping guide you in that process? Were there creative people in your, orbit that were helping you do that?
Yeah, there's still talk to them to this day. I mean, we're still friends. So my buddy Caps, we shared an office together at Paramount, and we would have these kind of conversations almost daily every time we saw each other. But having that kind of companionship and friendship of just design and keeps us focused. And obviously my manager, Chris Grohl, was a huge influence for me and believing in my work and what I was able to do. But he coached me and mentored me in a lot of ways to understand how to look at things through a consumer product lens. That was one of the terms that he would coin, and it just stuck with me because there's something so special about creating for entertainment in that way. But it's not just drawing SpongeBob's. It's thinking strategy. It's thinking scalability. It's working with a team who's going to illustrate it, like we were saying earlier, but I can help art direct the pose and get that to look right for scalability on a bedspread or a toothbrush, or maybe it's a billboard, but maybe it's just a t-shirt graphic. You never know where the things are going to go. But what we made were these guides, these style guides, and it's kind of like a catalog of here are icons, here are illustrations, here are patches, all of that stuff. So those are two people that for sure were pivotal for me.
Consumer goods are wild. It's endless. You're like, I didn't even think about a toothbrush application. Like, yeah, someone has to do that.
You walk down any aisle, any store, everything in that aisle is consumer product.
Yeah.
It's a very broad term, but for entertainment, it's pretty crazy when you think about, well, this movie release, all the packaging is different from this evergreen stuff. Why is that? And then if you start looking at it, and it's like, oh, this is being pulled from that movie guide. This is being pulled from that core guide. It's like you start to see it.
It's easy when you know.
Yeah, but it's just right there, though. But I would have never known that to that extent.
Of course.
By just going, without going internal is what I'm getting at.
I feel like there's sometimes these big camps of like, oh, you should only be internal, or like agency is best, or freelancing is best. And when we spoke, you kind of were like, it's a no until you've tried it, right? You're like, I'm not going to say like, oh, no, that's not for me until I've been in-house or I've been freelance. Could you speak to that mindset a little bit more?
Yeah, I can't speak to it unless I've tried it. That's how I look at it. Because you're right. I talk to a lot of designers, and especially people starting out in this career. Where should I go? Should I go freelance? Should I do the agency? And I feel like there's a lot of negativity around corporate. Look, I used to feel that a little bit when I started out too, because it just feels like are you selling out, or is there something like you're giving up? And man, I didn't know what I was talking about. That's what I found out. It's like you can't speak to this stuff unless you've tried it, unless you've been in the trenches and done it, because you might find something that you really love there. For me, I really love consumer products, and I love working at teams that scale in that way. That's the problem solving. That's the puzzle piece that I love. I would have never known if I wouldn't have went to corporate and that side. I would have never known how to really budget and understand my time if I wouldn't have freelanced. And also being on the hook for a lot of stuff. So if you fail, it's on you. And that's a pressure that I've never had anywhere else but freelance.
Yeah.
To that level. And if you go to a small agency, you start to see you kind of do a lot of tag teaming and getting things done under like high pressure maybe, or maybe fewer resources, you get a little scrappy too. But you meet very different designers in all those places. And I think there's something to be pulled from all of those. And so I say try them all. Try them all before you judge it, because you really don't know. And maybe you had a bad experience at that one studio or maybe that one corporate job. But there's a lot of other ones. I've been fortunate to have a really great experiences in all mine. Even the bad moments or days I could pull from those experiences, I still look at it as like I learned something. There's something that I remember to this day I can take to my freelance. I could take it to my collaborations. I could take it to these moments. That's the journey. So you got to try it all.
I think that's great advice.
I do have one really great question for you, Tyler. So does Tyler feel like there's a career-defining project for him, one that maybe he is most proud of at Paramount or as an independent artist?
Career-defining. There's definitely a lot of moments where, I kind of laugh at myself. Where it's like, wow, this is what little Tyler would have always wanted. I would say designing a poster for Jack White was a big one. That was for one of his Vegas shows a couple years back. And then I think it was maybe a month or two later, coincidentally, I ended up then being able to design a Black Keys poster. So two things happening very separately. One didn't happen because of the other, but the universe just like, wow. And then I was able to make those posters. Those posters are a huge deal for me because I'm a big fan of those artists and their music. And I can't play a lick of any music, so I'm never going to be able to do that.
You can do that.
But yeah, to your point, I was able to have a little piece of like, here's what I can offer and be a part of that road and that journey of that album, which was pretty special. But I mean, Nickelodeon as a whole, like working on that stuff, it was such a pivotal moment. Like I think about those days a lot, but I think about them in a way of that is why you should maybe say yes to a lot of things when it comes to opportunities. And even if you're unsure, maybe just try it, because worst case, you could just leave or quit. And then you can go back to doing what you're doing. I feel like a lot of times it's this pressure of like, I can't leave or I can't do. You can if you want to. It's just if you want to. But I think that was a huge one. The Nickelodeon Paramount was pivotal for sure.
So you've been a designer through a lot of big design moments and changes. Have there been Adobe tools that have evolved or changed or opened up doors for you that weren't originally possible?
We've seen a lot over the past 5 years or 6.
Walk us through it.
Oh, man, I know. I will say, well, we talked about going freelance early on, and then sadly, the pandemic things happening. That's where I started working with Adobe for the first time, was through live streams, doing live streams from my studio at home. So those things, seeing the early days of, I'm nervous to show my face and talk, and seeing that progression over the years of just, again, putting in your reps, doing it again. It's like you do it once and, that's not so bad. I'll do this differently. That has been a very interesting point of view for Adobe, just seeing how Adobe Live, all of this has evolved. That's been really exciting, and seeing where those opportunities have grown, and in-person events to Adobe Max things. That's so cool. But for tools, I'm, if you already know, I'm a huge Illustrator fan. I am all about Adobe Illustrator. It's probably my bread and butter to where every day I'm in it. It's evolved a lot. It's so much. I still use some of the most basic tools in there. It's the pen tool every day. I'm always doing that. It's so good. And I get the question a lot, especially for like beta testing and stuff. It's like, what would you want different with it? Or what would you add to it? I was like, it's pretty good. It's already really good. Just don't, I love those tools, but things that I've seen evolve, such as how we approach color is a pretty interesting one. How we can organize our files now by automatically organizing them, like in Photoshop now. It's like, that's bananas, But the performance overall, I just remember this. I'm going to get real nerdy. Like,
do it.
How stable it was then to now. I mean, this feels like a real plug, but really, it really is so much better. It's night and day from 6 years ago. And working with textures, we're on a good path and a good road. I want to go down that road to really hone in these vector textures more. But we've made a lot of progress in that, because I remember starting with texture brushes and things 6 years ago, and it felt nearly impossible.
crash your program or the file just got so big so fast. Yeah,
I know. There's like maybe 4 lines of texture, and that's all I can do.
Before, it was going very, very slow. But yeah, to your point, I mean, I feel like some of those feel invisible of like, oh, it's faster. But I mean, that's a huge difference if I can keep designing for hours and my program's not crashing and it's still there for me.
And the progression of, we talk about where do you stop in the process, or where is it good enough? You just realize that invisible boundary just got pushed further, because now it's like, I'm not limited to the textures now. Now it's like I could put more, but where am I going to put those extra strokes of texture or detail? And it's allowed me to just take it to another level.
That's such a good point. I know you said pen tools untouchable. Are there any tools that you're like, oh man, I wish that this was there? Like, I feel like the pencil update where you got the live preview, I was like, that was
such
brilliant.
a no-brainer. That is
Right,
why wasn't that here sooner, right? Because it was so perfect, and we need to see it. We need to see that live feedback.
Yeah, I think there's some tools that you just are like, oh, it's quirky. That's how it works.
Yeah.
But then when they update it, you're like, oh, thank gosh. Like, you understood what I needed and changed that. Are there any other tools that you're like, I just wish, if you want to manifest anything right now, now's your time. You can also think about it.
I think there's always some fun improvements with the transformation tool. I love the free transformation tool. And I think there are ways of just fine-tuning that a little bit. Not demoing the thing or reinventing it, but fine-tuning it, because I use it a lot for my perspectives. And I think that's like a really good tool that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. I mean, the shape builder tool, another one of those top 5s for me that I'm constantly using and just cleaning up my paths very easily. Those are really 2 low-hanging fruits for me. Like I go to those all the time. But that's another one. I was thinking about the blending features are...
Those got a big update too, right?
Huge
Where you
update.
can just not just do like a color, it can be like a shape. Like you can morph, an apple to a cow or like whatever you want to do.
What is that? That's crazy.
There's some wild stuff out there with blending. Yeah.
There is some, like, those are the tools that I constantly go back to, because those are such good foundational tools. And I think a lot of times there's a lot of really cool new features coming out, but we got to remember, we have to know the base and the boundaries of these good tools at the bottom to then build up, then use these new ones. And I think that's something that we need to remind, especially anyone starting out. Like, you gotta know those core tools, because they're good. They're really good. They get the job done.
And they do it really well.
I know, right?
All right. Well, we are about at time for today. So, Tyler, thank you so much for sharing your story with
Thank
us. I do want to say tomorrow you're going to be in studio, both of us, all 3
That's
of us.
right.
We'll be in studio demoing. So if people want to see some of what you're working on, do you want to give us a little preview of what you're going to do tomorrow?
I know, because we'll talk about new tools.
Shall we?
There's this the turntable tool that's now in Illustrator. So we'll be demoing that a little bit, showing some ways that I'm using it, and also integrating some of the motion that we can pull from those animated GIFs. But taking it a step further, again, how do we make these something on brand that feels unique and original and not templated? We're gonna walk through how I can do that and how I've been doing it to make some fun animated GIFs and illustrations that move.
It's awesome.
I've to see that.
Yeah,
I've seen the preview. Super cool. Ashley, what are you going to work on tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm going to be creating a pattern collection, so for phone cases, and basically I'm going to be using Turntable to take some of the motifs that I've illustrated and explore them further.
Nice.
So seeing like a character from a different angle and like how we can put them together to make a whole new pattern and kind of round out the collection. So yeah, that'll be really fun.
It's going to be awesome. And then I'm doing some stuff with balloon animals and using Turntable to explore all the dimensions of balloon animals on screen, not in person. I can't do that. But really exciting stuff. So wherever you're watching right now, chat, if you're on YouTube or Behance, be here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific. Again, tomorrow, we'll be starting off the day from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. 4 hours of fun with our friends here. So definitely don't miss out on that. And then one more reminder, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, we would love for you to do so. So hit the subscribe button, make sure that you don't miss out on any updates or live streams from us. But thank you so much for tuning in. And if you stick around, up next is our own Ryan Selvey with File New.